name is Sal, 15 years on the Erie Canal. She's a good old worker and a good old pal. 15 years on the Erie Canal.
It's been 166 years since the Erie Canal opened New York to the west, the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes. It's become part of New York's history and every school child's lesson plan.
Low Bridge, everybody down. Low Bridge, we're coming to a town.
The canal is also coming to a crucial point in its own history on Election Day. At the top of the ballot is a proposal that could determine its future. It's a constitutional amendment that would allow tolls to be charged to users and canal lands to be leased for development. Both actions are forbidden now. The amendment would also create a special fund for the toll revenue to be dedicated for canal use only. Before we focus on the pros and cons of Proposal 3, a look at some background. The original 363-mile Erie Canal was enlarged and rebuilt in the early 1900s into the New York State Barge Canal system. Additions link the canal to the Finger Lakes, Lake Ontario, and Lake Champlain. On the main line, there are 36 locks between Lake Erie and the Hudson River to accommodate the nearly 600-foot drop from west to east. Near Waterford, at the junction of the Mohawk and Hudson Rivers, there are 6 locks in a row that lower a boat in stages almost 200 feet. Just one stage requires emptying 3 million gallons of water. Without the locks, hazards like the Grand Cohoes Falls would stand in the way of travelers. It was at the east end of the system that Inside Albany met 2 travelers from another century. DeWitt Clinton and Jesse Howley are portrayed by John Groves and Mark DeCracker, 2 amateur historians and the leaders of Erie's restoration interests everyone. They came across New York on a tug, pulling an exhibition barge about the canal's history. Their goal was to call attention to the ballot proposal by recreating Governor DeWitt Clinton's trip at the 1825 opening of the canal.
As people thought when he first discussed the idea of building a canal across virgin wilderness and filling in valleys and building aqueducts and stone locks, that this was crazy. That
Thomas Jefferson, the president, tell him he was crazy?
Yes.
The federal government wouldn't spend any money.
The federal government was trying to raise $200,000 to build a small canal, and they couldn't do that. And he said, we certainly can't afford sending money to New York State. He said it was a little short of madness, and that the technology would not be available for another 100 years. But that didn't dissuade DeWitt Clinton at all. He said, well, New Yorkers are build a better and sterner stuff. We'll build this canal ourselves. We're going to raise our own money. And on a population base of about 1.3 million people in New York State at that time, they raised $6 million from the legislature and started the Erie Canal in 1817.
The man who may have inspired Clinton was Jesse Howley.
Jesse was in debtor's prison over in Canandaigua because he was shipping flour over wagon loads, and it was costing him $100 a ton. And he went bankrupt, and so that's where he spent his time, 2 years in debtor's prison. And while in debtor's prison, he wrote the essays under the surname of Hercules about the idea of envisioning of Erie Canal.
This is before the canal. He was shipping over land, and it was costing him too much money.
Exactly right. And when the Erie Canal opened, it cost $10 a ton to ship.
And instead of 6 weeks, it took only 8 days to ship from Albany to Buffalo. The canal was an instant success. Tolls, which were charged back then, paid off the construction cost of $7 million in just 10 years. By 1845, the canal was New York's biggest employer. It took 25,000 men and boys to operate and maintain it. But by 1882, the railroad threatened the canal as a freight hauler. New York lawmakers changed the Constitution to prohibit tolls to help the canal. Now they want to amend it again to charge users, since the canal has changed from a commercial resource to a recreational one. The problem is tourism is tough to promote without the usual amenities along the canal banks.
As we've seen a lot of areas as we've been traveling that right now are set up for commercial traffic, and with the future revitalization will be establishment of more marinas, the bed and breakfasts. We would have loved to stay in a bed and breakfast as we moved along, but we didn't find any right along the canals. Banks.
Back in 1825, DeWitt Clinton brought Lake Erie's water to New York City in a symbolic wedding of the waters. Modern-day Clinton and Howley passed a 130-pound keg of Great Lakes water to the tug, which was to take them to New York City. They need those voters, too, if the canal is to be reborn. We caught up with some modern-day travelers in a couple of the canal's locks. This sailboat from Sarnia, Ontario, was on its way to the Bahamas for the winter. They had the same complaint about services along the way.
There's a few places, particularly at the other end, that you can stop. Tonawanda has nice public docks there and everything. It's right up by the supermarket, so there's no problem. But at this end, you have quite a ways to go most of the time.
So you'd be glad to pay a fee?
Yeah, I would have no objection to that. I mean, it's quite common up our way. If you go into the harbors, Michigan has some beautiful harbors that they've built, a whole series of them, and they're reasonably priced and brings a lot of money into the towns, I think.
We have two canal systems in Ontario, that the Trent and the Rideau, that all along, they're all little villages and lots of places to stop, and very scenic, and you can go into any of the towns. And you know,
does it cost the boater to maintain? Do you have to pay fees on that canal system?
No.
It's a free system.
It's a free system, and it's beautiful, and it's very much used. We were really surprised when we got into this that there was nothing along the sides.
In Tonawanda, we spent about $600 there getting provisions and fuel and whatnot. And in the other towns that we've gone through, that there have been places, I imagine it'd be $100 minimum in every town that we stop. But there's some of them, there's so darn few of them, they're just, you can't stop.
Another boater said he only uses the canal from Amsterdam to the Hudson River, but he thought that might change if the amendment passes.
I like it. I really do. I think it's something that's missing from the canal system. If they could allow commercial development to provide some more facilities along the canal, I think that it might increase the overall usage, because it's mostly recreational now anyways. The fee they're proposing is very reasonable, I think.
How much are they?
30. Well, I have read that it's $30 for a season pass. That's very reasonable.
You'd be willing to pay?
Oh, absolutely.
We took a ride with another type of boater who says he'll be the highest toll payer in New York if the amendment passes. In spite of that, Peter Wiles, who builds, rents, and runs boats along the system, is a strong supporter of the change that he thinks charging tolls and developing canal lands will bring.
You provide simple amenities, telephones, showers, johns, fuel supplies, and the person stops and he looks at the frame shop and he goes to the hardware store and he maybe has a hamburger. That's the joy of traveling on it.
Wiles recalls his trips to Great Britain, which has 2,000 miles of canals. The tourist industry there is thriving, he says, without damage to the environment.
The 2,000 boats are privately owned, and they look like this, and they might be up as much as 70 feet long. Then they have 1,600 rental boats, and they're always taking a holiday. And they're able to do this without destroying, you can call it nuance, you can call it beauty, you can call it just the being out in the country.
Wiles patterned his rental boat business after Great Britain's, but still there is apprehension that leasing land along the canal here could lead to overdevelopment.
Economics tends to take care of itself. You're not going to build the condominium in Montezuma Swamp. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And there's maybe 3% or 4% of the entire system that lends itself to economic development, and there already is economic development there. They are the villages, the Frankfurts, the Schenectadys that are on the system, and they're just going to improve part of their frontage, which is not now known for its magnificent beauty.
Thomas Rime, the head of the State Canal Board, agrees with Wiles. He cited the kind of development that he would like to see more of if the amendment passes.
In Little Falls, for example, there's a whole redeveloped street called Canal Place, and there's half a dozen shops, there's a fine French restaurant, there's a deli, there's a pizza parlor, and this is all part of the community. It's supported by the community, or it couldn't exist strictly on canal users alone. But there is now a place for boaters to stop there and to avail themselves of these services.
But Barbara Bartoletti, the Legislative Action Director of the League of Women Voters, worries that the amendment doesn't provide safeguards against overdevelopment.
We support what is in the good things in this amendment. What we do oppose, and therefore we must oppose the entire amendment, is the lack of what should be in it, and that's a master plan. I have information that says 2/3 of the surplus land around the canal could be, 2/3 of the land around the canal is surplus land and could be sold. as well as long-term lease. And that being the case, certainly that would make the need for a master plan very obvious.
The fact of the matter is the amendment only relates to state-owned canal land, and that amounts to 2 or 3% of the whole 524-mile system. 90+% of the land along the canals today is currently in private hands. The state only owns land where it appropriated money for the barge canal terminals, for offloading of products and that sort of thing, or where there's a lock structure or a dam, or where the canal was dug artificially. And you put all that together, and you're talking about approximately 35,000 acres statewide in 18 different counties.
Ryan adds that the legislature did not fund the development of a master plan. It could cost as much as $1 million to gather new information and map the entire canal. So the Canal Board decided to go ahead with the amendment to begin generating revenue. The League says it shouldn't have.
And we consider the canal, because it is 40% of the freshwater resources in the state, to be a very precious resource. And even though all of these good things are in this amendment, we feel that there should have been in this amendment, following the hearings that were held, where nearly 50% of the people testifying asked that there be something like a moratorium, if not a master plan, at least a moratorium on the sale of land until a master plan could be developed. We would wonder why that wasn't put in the legislation that was developed.
Ryan claims since the Canal Board process began, there has been a virtual moratorium on selling canal land.
But clearly, you have to look at the evidence that's there. And the evidence shows that the governor and the legislature, at every step of the way, have said, we want to enhance this system because it is such a tourism and economic development resource. We want to make the best canal that we possibly can have in this state. And we're on the verge of doing that.
Low bridge, everybody down. Low bridge, I've the finest mule in town. Eats a bella paper dinner, and on top of that myself tries to drink up all the water in the Erie Canal.
This amendment has won wide newspaper editorial support. The League of Women Voters is one of the few organizations which opposes it. And the League asked, can you really trust government to do the right thing in terms of development in the absence of a master plan? Tom Ryan answers, look, the state owns so little of this canal land now that local governments could go ahead, make a deal with the developer with or without this amendment. So what's the big deal?
As you know, there are two other items on the statewide ballot. One would expand the borrowing power of the Job Development Authority, and the other would swap some state land in the Adirondacks to expand a local airport. Next week, we may get the answer to two burning questions. How is the governor going to close a $700 million budget deficit, and is he going to run for president?
The governor could spill the beans on public television next Wednesday night at 8 on a phone-in statewide. We'll see you next week on Inside Albany.